Lonzetta. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mufti, you're doing it. You're doing it. How you doing? Kayfa hal?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I feel like I need a caffeine shot, but I can't have a caffeine shot because I got this. Otherwise, I'll ruin my sleep after this. What's going on? Where are you? Where are you joining us from, Lonzetta?
Coming to you live from the snowy mountains of Denver, Colorado.
Wow. All right. Colorado. Doing it.
Alhamdulillah,
There is
alhamdulillah.
something very cool just about the names of the states of America and even the cities. There is, I have to say, America does have a, by default, it has a very cool vibe to it, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. You got to come
just
make it
can't-
over here one day, Mufti.
Yeah, definitely. And I hear the state of Colorado, definitely. I hear there's some, are they making, what is it? Certain, I feel that, have they made some certain legislations on psychedelics and stuff? Or I think I've read that somewhere. Yeah, I
No,
thought
yeah,
so.
that's true. No, that's funny because one of the reasons I was calling was going to bring up a funny story about that to lighten the mood a little bit. Yeah,
let's have that. Yeah.
So
this is what we wait for. This is why we live stream.
Subhanallah. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So to answer your question, I think they did at least decriminalize it, and I think they are trying to get the legislation in the next election to make it recreational. I think so. But yeah, it's a lot more
medicinal and therapeutic.
The entheogens, yes.
Entheogens.
Entheogens,
Allah.
Of course.
This is why those of you that are reading, it doesn't just say Lonzetta, it says Allama, the great knowledgeable Sheikh Lonzetta. Allah.
Well, subhanAllah, I might have typed it wrong, but it's supposed to be like Alama, like a mark, because my name is Mark in English.
Alama.
So the Arabs, the Arabs back in
Alama.
back when they call me Alama, ya Alama. So,
Alama.
So it stuck with me.
No,
so I just kind of it's a unique name and it stuck with me, and it's so yeah.
It is. It's cool because alama in Arabic means like a mark, like you'd say alama to istifham, question mark. But if you did a shadda on the lam, so you said allama, like a double L. Now allama, it would mean like a very learned sheikh, like the allama.
So I win either way. So alhamdulillah.
Yeah, it's 100%. People see, they go, allama's coming, allama, and then before you know it, Lonzetta, Mark turns up and he's high on shrooms. And they think this sheikh must be something else. He's like, is he talking to angels or he's just, the sheikh is in it.
Oh, man. SubhanAllah. So, I just wanted to say a couple of things. First, it's finally nice to meet you. I've been following you since 2016 or so. When you had like a couple thousand subscribers.
I see your messages always on Instagram, by the way. So this is why I thought Alama Lonzetta, let's get him on.
Yeah, so as a convert, I converted to Islam like 12 years or so ago. And the first it's probably the same kind of path from a lot of converts, especially maybe who watch you. But the first few years you have this zeal and you're into interfaith studies, the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, how it all kind of ties together, and you're giving dawah and you have that zeal, but you don't really know the deen. You just know that you're happy you found something that makes sense. That's what you burn off of for a couple of years. And then you start kind of integrating the community and you see why a lot of people do different things. They're praying different, what's going on there. And at that point, maybe like 4 or 5 years to my journey, then the school of Medina, chose me.
Allah
and I had enhanced my love for the deen. And I was like, honestly, why didn't no one tell me about this Imam Malik and the school of Medina? And this brings another dimension to Islam that makes more sense. I was really just like, wow, this is part of the tradition. This is not like a forefront of the tradition.
I love it, honestly. I think, I'm not against any person following any kind of school of thought or school of thought.
Yeah.
And I think fair enough, they're all kind of in their own way doing their things, and it's wonderful. But the school of Medina, the madhab of Imam Malik has been, I must say, in this journey of ilm for me, a joy. It has been, honestly. I found it just so amazing in how it gels naturally, and the tradition, and how it had this kind of balance between authenticity, but at the same time always contemporaneous welfare, like the welfare of the
perfectly said, subhanAllah.
Yeah,
perfectly said.
And I love the fact it's had kind of all these kind of outspoken mavericks as well, all throughout the. They've just been always saying, sometimes just saying crazy things. So I'm like, okay, I'm not the craziest of them.
It shows me, Mufti, subhanAllah. And then you go back to the history, and you find these different opinions and they all go back to the Malikis. Like they always, like you said, a perfect combination of expanding the road for people, but also keeping it authentic. So you don't have, you're not like appealing to people or anything like that. You're appealing to a tradition, and to me, it just seems the most authentic and most organic as far as living your life.
And it was, it was the only school historically that was so that its kind of diaspora was so widespread, in the sense that, see, like other schools had like huge quantities of followers. Like the Hanafi school had like a huge quantity as well of followers. It was definitely it is today the most in terms of number, but it was like, let's say, Eastern Europe, like Hanafi would be Eastern Europe coming down, I suppose, subcontinent, and then that Middle East region. And it's just like, which is a huge part, but that's it. But what the Malikis had, you see, because they were kind of all spread out, like you had them from Hijaz, the Saudi, which would be today Saudi, and then the Middle East, Iraq, but then North Africa, but then Central Africa, but then Spain, a totally different continent, Sicily. And one thing I really am impressed with was that they completely disagreed. So these became sub schools. They call them sometimes madaris dakhiliya, like they became sub schools of the madhab. So you had the Andalusia, the Madrasa Andalusia, you had the Iraqiyin, you had the Misriyin, the Maghariba. But what they did was even though they disagreed, they didn't, like, they just kind of respected each other. Like and I don't just mean respect, like proper respect. Like they would say, Ashabuna al-Iraqiyin, our Iraqi companions, they say this, by the way, they disagree with us. But whereas what the other schools did was, there was a bit more of a dominance hierarchy. So, for example, in the Iraqi, like the Hanafis, what they started to do was, if they disagreed, they would say, we don't consider them to, like, as in, we're not dissing them, but we don't give fatwa by them. Like their fatwa is not considered anything. And this, you see, I just feel it didn't enrich it as well. So yeah, this is like a huge. So as a brief example, just to give you a little example for the viewers. So you see, some of the Malikis in Iraq, because what the Malikis did is they produced, the different schools had different flavors. So the Iraqi school was a minority school that was surrounded by Hanafis, and Hanafis were mainly very usuli people of usul fiqh. So this is why the Iraqi Malikis are the first to come up with usul in the Maliki Madhab, because they have to rival the Hanafis. So because the Hanafis have to always, the early Hanafis anyway, were always very reason based. They wanted, it's haram, but why is it haram? What's the reason? What's the illah? So this is why the Iraqi Malikis in their fiqh books always give the explanation. They will say the asal, Abdul Wahhab al-Baghdadi will say the reasoning for that is this, or so on. They're very explanatory. Now, whereas the Andalusis became very hadithi Malikis, like you get Abu Bakr ibn Arabi, you'll get Qadi Iyad, Ibn Abd al-Bar, all these kind of very hadithi kind of Malikis doing commentary on hadith. And the Maghribis became very, because they had nobody except Malikis, the debate went internal. Like, okay, Imam Malik says this shouldn't be done. What does shouldn't here mean? Does it mean it's haram or disliked? So it became a more internal kind of, like, we're going to unfold it, unpack it internally. So you can see these kind of little flavors. So now the Iraqi Usulis, the Malikis, they said, many of them, that, or some of them, they said that for example, some of them, like, this is to give it a flavoring, any ruling, any command, imperative, like, so any hukam, like if we're going to instruct something, like to say, go, sit, stand, eat, drink, any kind of imperative language that is found in the Quran can be for haram or wujub or obligation. But in a hadith, some of the Iraqi Malikis said it can never reach wujub or tahrim. It can only reach dislike or recommendation. Now look at that. Now, with that principle, you can imagine that it changes everything, doesn't it?
It changes everything.
So now you've got Malikis in the West, which were in Spain, who were very Hadithi and disagree with that. Like, they say no, like Ibn Abdul Bar is like a very Hadithi kind of Maliki. He's like, no, if the Hadith says it's haram. But yet, when he will cite them, he will always say, the great sheikhs of our school who are from the East disagree with us on these matters.
It's the adab.
Like, they will never diss them. Yeah. And they'll kind of incorporate, as in, okay, that's their view, this is our view. Like, we're not dissing, we're not saying, oh, they're deviants or whatever. We're just saying. And so another interesting one is clothing for prayer. So the Eastern Malikis said that this has got nothing to do with prayer. What's clothing got to do with prayer? So yes, you should be clothed, but you should be clothed anyway. So technically, they said, if a person prays naked, it's not a good thing, but what's it got to do with salah? Like, as in, if let's say a person's praying naked on his own at home, they say this is not good but it's not a part of salah, so the salah is still valid. Whereas the Malikis in the West or the other parts would say, no, like, wait a minute, clothing is a condition of salah. So it enriches the debate. Exactly. And because they didn't slam each other down, some of them were allowed to go a bit wild with their ijtihad. So, and I don't agree. I say that, well, this is out of order. It's like, you'll get a great Maliki, like Al-Lakhmi, super huge. He's going to be from Sicily and then influenced in Northwest Africa, like Tunis and places. He will give rulings, and he's like a don of the madhab. He will give rulings saying things like, some of the Malikis, they go on maslaha, welfare, and they say you're allowed to change the ruling to reflect the welfare. So they will say things like, in that day and age, oh, if there was a culprit, let's say you arrested someone, and you're pretty, you've got the gut feeling and it's him, but you just can't prove it. They would say, oh, you can beat him up to prove it, like to get a confession. And you think, well, what the hell is that about? Where does justice go? It's gone out the window. But they would say, oh, but, it's in light of welfare. And Lakhmi, what he said? This was like totally crazy. He said, like, if a ship was sinking, and because it's too heavy, the load. So imagine if we could alleviate the load. He said you could sink 1/3 of the passengers to save 2/3. You're like, what the hell are you on about? But he is a legend in the Maliki Madhab. Even though you see, this is the difference. You see, even I look, I may have crazy views or whatever. I would say that view is totally crazy and off the rockers, and I would say that is not allowed. But I would totally honor Abul Hasan al-Lakhmi. He is, considered one of the major people who understood the madhab. And so his book Tabsirah is like, I mean, I've got it right there. It's like in so many, whether it's going to be about almost 15 volumes, but it's this honoring that kind of allows you later on to still, because if you keep shutting people down, then it kills that innovative thought, because people innovative in a good way, not in a bad
No,
way.
exactly. And that was kind of like the third phase in my journey of Islam. And I came across your video about the School of Medina in the 21st century. And that's when it all kind of came back full circle about how this madhab, in particular in my life now, encapsulated that there's no gatekeeping amongst it, and this kind of understanding.
I think
there's
some people have tried.
It gives the oxygen to breathe. No, I mean, of course, but
I think some people have tried, but it's hard to gatekeep it because there's just too much. This like how do you gatekeep it? It's like there's a gate, but you could shut the door, but there's no wall.
But they're running in the back way.
There's like no wall here. You can just walk out. It's so, I do love it. I must say it has been one of the joys. I will, you know what I'm going to do, Lonzetta. I've got so many classes from my Risala class that I haven't streamed live. They're old. They're about 7 years old or something, but I will start streaming them. You know what? You reminded me, and they are very detailed, but I will start streaming them so people can use them as a reference and stuff. And I will, I did think to myself, I want to do maybe even, it doesn't have to be a lengthy text because I get bored, but maybe like some kind of a text in Maliki fiqh in good quality, because those videos are old and the quality is excellent. So I was thinking, like maybe I should do something, because a lot of people have reached out and said to me, look, I'm really interested in the Maliki Madhab, and it fills me with joy because it's a part of the tradition that goes back to Medina.
There's a thirst for it. Yeah. There's a real thirst for it. I mean, even your video about how to pray according to the Malikis is one of your most viewed videos.
Yeah, it is
there is like a drawn. It draws people towards it because and it has an attraction towards it because it's refreshing, and that it doesn't have that constraints and that gatekeeping and I mean, I listened to your Qareen and Ashmawiyah and other lectures, so you need to do that, inshallah. But I'll get to my
your story.
I'll get to my quick story. I know you've been keeping you. We're gonna go and then I'll get some of the other people on, but just so the other people will have so I'll kind of try to keep it brief. I bring this story up because it happened on a New Year's Day, and it was probably like 13 years ago in the time of Jahiliyyah or before Islam or whatever, and it does have an Islamic question at the end of it that maybe you can touch on briefly, because I know you're busy and it's getting late. So back in 2008, 2009, I was working at Circuit City, which is like an old school version of Best Buy. I don't know if you have those in UK or whatnot. Electronics store anyway. And I was living in an apartment with my buddy. And I got home from work, and him and a couple friends were together, and they were ingesting salvia. Are you familiar with salvia?
I think it's the plant. Yes. It's psychedelic,
okay. It's psychedelic. Yeah.
I'm not apparently familiar with it.
Not familiar with it.
Yet.
Yeah. Personally,
yet, huh? Did I say yet? Toba.
So I get there, and my roommate's like, "Oh, you gotta try this. You gotta try this. He did this, and this happened to him, and this happened to him." And I was like, it didn't sound like enticing. Like, that sounds kind of crazy. That didn't sound like a really good time or fun time. I don't want to deal with this. I just got off work. Let's just watch TV or whatever. Blah blah blah.
Exactly.
So I had 3 or 4 of my friends there, and they all just kept trying to entice me the whole night, and I kept brushing them off, and they all stopped.
You never get friends trying to say, have you read this book? You got to read this book. Or trying to say,
be so persistent with it.
Have you got onto that diploma? You need to get on that diploma. But
the persistence, man, subhanAllah. So so they all pretty much gave up except for one guy. And this one guy, he kept
steadfastness.
Istiqama. He kept going and going for hours. And finally, I just gave up. Just to stop hearing from him, I just gave in. I was like, okay, let me do this. And apparently it was like the most higher priced version, which is the most, I guess, concentrated of what, I don't know if it's DMT.
Potent, kind of.
Yeah, okay. I'm not, whatever it was. But so I definitely wasn't prepared. And on top of that, they would tell me, it's just like weed or something. You're just getting high. It's not going to do anything, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, fine, whatever, blah, blah. So I do it, and we're watching this movie, and you kind of drift off watching this movie, and I think I'm just in a dream state. Like, you just think you have this feeling, I must have fallen asleep on the couch. I'm just dreaming. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I'm watching this scene from this movie, and I'm then all of a sudden in the scene of the movie. The movie actually becomes real around me. And I'm kind of freaking out, as you would imagine.
That's the point where you realize,
exactly. I was like, what happened? And you couldn't really speak that well. So I started looking around, panicking. And I noticed I don't have control of my hands, just kind of like almost like a zombie. And I'm saying, who did this? What did you do? Did you put acid on this? Or what did you do to me? What did you do to me? And at that point, I looked at all of my friends in the room. And this is before, Islam or anything that I knew about Islam or anything like that, of the unseen and stuff like that. And everyone in the room on the left side of their shoulder was this bald looking thing with big eyes and sharp teeth. And, they all had one, and they were all sitting on the left side of the shoulder. Wow. And then the guy that was the most persistent in getting me to do this, he was just the most persistent on it. His was the biggest. It was almost like jacked. It was like big. And it was laughing at me. And it was just like mocking me. Yeah. And his is noticeably bigger than the other ones. So then again, I start to panic, as you would imagine. And then the whole world starts kind of like blending together, and I feel like I'm getting sucked into a vortex. And of course, like with the really strong, like the DMT and this stuff, it only lasts for a few minutes. So the intensity is strong, but after I started swirling into this, I thought was in the 7th.
Oh, was that what it is? Is it a short? Is short? Intense.
Yeah, it's just like DMT, duration. Where it's going to be like 5, 10, 15 minutes max.
Oh, right.
It's not like psilocybin or LSD, which
is like
15 minutes. Hour. Yeah,
it's kind of manageable, isn't it? In a way. Okay, I mean, it's okay. You go through death and back.
Prepared.
Okay, but it's still, it's only 20 minutes. I mean,
exactly.
Like 10 hours.
If you got things to do,
it's like
because psilocybin and LSD could be 6-8 hours long, and it can be a journey.
12 hours long. It could be.
Depending on it. So I'm just bringing this up. So then I start in my mind, I'm swirling around, and I'm going sucked into what I thought at the time the 7 circles of hell or whatever. And I find myself on the floor, and I'm finally, minutes go by, and I finally kind of get it out of my system. I remain pissed off at those guys from to this day. But so what I was talking, so years later as a Muslim, and you hear this concept in the Quran about the Qareen, and about this Qareen, this companion with you, that kind of tries to misguide you or deviate you. And when you go on these entheogens, you kind of experience these things. Do you think that are these separate beings, or is the Qareen like your alter ego, and it's like my brain is like formulating these things that I saw, and this is like the essence of what that is. So I just want to get your thoughts on that.
I mean, first of all, shukran for the story, sharing that.
It reminds me every New Year's, because it happened on New Year's Day.
And people watching this, do not do that. Okay, people watching this at home, don't. But the question is definitely epic. That look, when people experience things like, maybe it could be on shrooms, but maybe on shrooms it may not be so much about entities, like as in these speaking entities, but people do on DMT. They experience
it happens on psilocybin as well.
Yeah, it does as well. Yeah, on the dosage. Yeah. But I mean, I suppose there's an essence of thing being communicated with, and then there's like some people will speak of like Terence McKenna speaks of like the green elves of the DMT world, that you see, that many people see these green elves that are like behind the kind of cogs of reality, and they communicate with you and stuff. So the question is, what are these beings and entities? Because when you experience them, you experience them as very real and more real than
it was
this
as real
real.
as this conversation.
So it's not, you know, and you know what a dream is like, and you know that wasn't like a dream, it was like real. So this is where it gets difficult, and this is why Rick Strassman kind of stopped all his research, because he didn't know where to put it in science, because these people were too convinced it was real. So it's like, well, what do I do with that? But Islamically, I would say, look, these may be a way of saying that that this is like, it is a, I feel that it is like a kind of kashf into a dimension. What is that dimension? We don't fully understand it. It doesn't mean that, let's say you meet green, if you do meet these green beings or entities or these elves, or you meet something else, or you, like with DMT, people often say with ayahuasca, they say there's an animal, like like there may be a leopard or a jaguar or a snake, a spirit animal people often speak of.
Do you
It
think
doesn't.
there's oh sorry,
I mean,
you said these green beings, do you think there's any kind of relation to the Khadir or Qadr, the green one in the story of Musa?
That's very fascinating. I
Because
never
you hear
thought of
this
that. Wow, that
reoccurring
just blew my
stories of the
mind that
green
you said
beings,
that.
and they have knowledge,
Wow,
and they come to
that is
you, and it's
profound.
almost like a dream state, and it's kind of mixed
Yeah,
maxy, but you come out of that engagement more knowledgeable.
No, you
So I
do.
don't know if
That
you
is
ever
very
thought about.
profound.
I don't know if
Wow,
you've ever
I
kind of thought of
never
that in
thought
the
of that
sense of
before, but
Qadr and the
is very
stories of the green
profound.
one, because that's even
Wow.
among Alexander the Great. There were stories of the green one and meeting with people, and
Wow.
Alexander the Great was always looking for this fountain of youth. And there's
Wow,
always stories of Qadr living
very
forever
profound. You know,
and being.
now that you say it, it's kind of obvious, but I never ever thought of it like that. You see, I'm not saying that these beings that people see, these entities, have to correlate with, they have to signify certain concepts of this world. Like, so for example, if you say, well, are they the jinn? Are they the Qareen? Is it Khidr? I'm not saying any of that. I wouldn't say that. What I would
It's all
say is,
metaphysical.
it's
We
not that.
couldn't
It's not
tell.
like
Yeah,
that. It's not that you don't have a correlation from this world to that dimension in that sense. It doesn't work like that. But that would just be a kashf into a dimension that we don't understand here.
exactly.
Because it's not part of our day-to-day living. So I don't think we could describe it. I mean, we could describe it, but I don't think we could categorize it neatly, because that world doesn't work quite in. It's a bit like even the world of dreams doesn't work like this world.
Exactly.
Dreams doesn't have the same cause and effect, and it doesn't. Sometimes you're in a different place all of a sudden. So similarly, in these things, you're just, everything's different. You could be different. You could completely disintegrate. You could have non-duality. Maybe you don't. Maybe you do keep yourself, and I don't know. But there have been a lot of studies. I would refrain from drawing strict parallels with Islamic language. I wouldn't say, for example, we're going to call that the Qareen, and we're going to call that I wouldn't do that. I would just say it is. I do love the word kashf, which is a kind of, the mystics and the Sufis have used it, that it is a kind of an unveiling, they say. And if you read some of the Sufic literature, even Ibn Arabi or other people, when they describe stuff, it very much seems like the lights and the worlds and they'll say, they're in the cosmos, and the cosmos in front of them, and it seems to echo what studies of what people under that let's say engage with sacred medicine also experience. So it's interesting. I think it needs a lot of research, but it's a shame that religion, because a lot of organized, institutionalized religion shuts it down, so it doesn't. So a lot of the research kind of gets lost because they don't welcome it. So yeah,
like you said, like when Graham Hancock and others mentioned, like a lot of these same reoccurring experiences from different cultures and different people, and I just find that Islam does have a lot of similar experiences and expressions through the Quran, like
Definitely,
the Qareen. And
definitely,
I mean, you don't really see that in the Bible about
because even in the
companion.
Quran, it
It's
doesn't
really
explain what these things are on purpose. It doesn't explain, like it doesn't explain the Qareen, it doesn't explain the Kiram and Katibin, it doesn't explain these things. Now, people think Kiram and Katibin is like that's the names, but Katibin is actually plural. It's not actually two. But people, you see, the point is the Quran doesn't explain them because it lets you just imagine them. It doesn't matter. Like that's not the purpose. The purpose is something much greater. But yeah, shukran, Allama, Lonzetta, it's been epic. I really appreciate this topic and discussion. Got to stay in touch.
Yes,
Drop me.
Much love, Mufti.
I've got
for your time.
your profile page on point anyway. So take care. Speak soon. Much love. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
People.